We are one. When my boot comes down on your neck, we are one. That's right. Piano solo. Do you feel it? I feel it. It's got me by the feels. So bad, baby.
So I said that I wasn't going to talk about the Brown University incident, but I'm going to talk about the aftermath a little bit and some of the weird stuff that happened. So many ridiculous things are being said that it just blows my mind. Every time there is some incident with a gun, it is always the gun. This is how they paint it out. It's the gun, it's the access to the gun, it's people's ease of getting a gun. It's always the gun, the gun, the gun, the gun. So Trump had posted about the cameras not working, and then suddenly they changed their mind about that and blame it on the individual, how it should always be.
There can be no excuse for that in the modern age. It just doesn't get worse.
Check this out.
But yesterday, Brown's president, Christina Paxson, said the shooter is the only one to blame.
The shooter is responsible.
Wow. Suddenly, the shooter is finally responsible and not cameras or guns or whatever. They don't even realize their total and complete contradiction. Now, check this out. Here's the hero of the day, and this is rather important.
What stands out to me, the fact that the thing that blew this case wide open was a random homeless guy who provided the necessary connections and information to tie all this together, speaks volumes to me about the lack of proper cameras, security, you name it, on the campus of Brown. Joe?
Okay, there's our homeless guy, right? There's two things they're promoting there. More surveillance, facial recognition, that type of stuff. And they're promoting the homeless hero here. I'll leave it at that. Now, in the Las Vegas incident, Jesus Campos was the hero. He went up there and took a bullet from Stephen Paddock, if you recall that. And then he hid out and they vanished him, right? Because things weren't going right. In the Boston event, Carlos Arredondo was the hero. The guy who had previously burnt down a government vehicle and ended up a hero in Boston, even though that he burned down a government marine vehicle in Florida way back in the day. In Bondi Beach, a random Muslim immigrant is the hero. There are tons of these, especially in America. You get the picture. But in the case of the Brown University event, a random homeless man was the hero. And with a nation full of flock cameras, facial recognition, and a plethora of technology that the population is completely unaware of, a homeless guy who allegedly enters these buildings all the time happens to be the hero. Are you seeing a pattern here? Because I am. It's very, very interesting. Now, just like the couch case, in most of these cases, they find the person dead in weird circumstances.
We have a Fox News alert. A high-placed source has just told Fox News that the suspected shooter was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Let's bring back in Paul Mara. Paul, obviously a huge development just broke while you were explaining beautifully your opinion. So we know that the suspected shooter went into the facility. We're now told by a highly placed source that they have found the suspected shooter dead, apparently from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
It never makes sense. This guy barges onto campus into a large room, starts taking people out, right? Then he hides in a storage unit and takes himself out. Don't you think that's kind of weird? Like, why wouldn't he make it public and big? He's hiding in a tiny storage unit somewhere. I mean, that's more of a place you would take somebody to assassinate them than someone would hide out and take themselves out. It's just bizarre.
Did he act alone? Was he completely a lone wolf, or was he working with other people here? I know the supposition is that he was working alone, and you hope that's the case, but right now we don't.
He'll always be working alone. These people will always be working alone. Want to know why? Because one person doing something doesn't warrant an investigation. It stops with that person. When there is more than one person involved, then it turns into a quote-unquote conspiracy. And they really need to investigate because there could be more and more and more. It's always a lone wolf because a lone wolf is the easiest, especially a dead lone wolf. Now, let's go back to when they were trying to identify the shooter. And then they were trying to identify this guy. They were like, who is this guy? We need to talk to him, right? So people were going through the footage, picking out colors of clothing. And I found that very interesting that people still use colors of clothing on camera to identify anybody, because it's kind of weird, and I'll tell you why.
He's associated somehow with the shooter. Now, that what appears to be a big beard there isn't a beard, it's an optical illusion, but see
he's talking about optical illusions. We're going to get into that.
The white on top of the head there. He's got a white-looking backpack on, wearing all black shoes. Very similar clothing, by the way, to the suspect.
That's kind of weird.
Like a little bit of a white cap on. And so it looked all black, but it's from a distance, right? So look at his hat. His head covering is white. He's got right there a white sort of bag that he's carrying.
So there he is, going color by color by color. I thought colors weren't factual anymore. Do you remember the video that I did on the event with Audrey Hale? Let's check that out again. What they did was they said that these shoes right here, which you can clearly see are white, black, with a silver stripe right there. It's very easy to see the silver stripe, all of it. White and black with a silver stripe. They look like Vans or Vans knockoffs. And they appear to have a little bit thicker soles, like a lot of chick sneakers have that, right? So they were trying to tell you that these shoes right here weren't really black and white and silver. They were really yellow, red, flames. But the camera in this room, the high definition camera, was washing the colors out just on the shoes. I swear to God. In fact, Tim Pool released one of the most idiotic responses to this that I've ever heard. The most moronic, shilly, fetty, idiotic responses ever. Let's go back to that real quick before I show you this. Check this out. It is classic.
It could be artifacting from grainy video, but the surveillance footage actually seems to be high resolution. If you watch the surveillance footage yourself, it does appear the perpetrator is wearing black shoes with a white streak, but then later, in the police body camera footage, the shooter is wearing Vans with a flame on the side of them. All that means potentially, if it's true, because maybe it's just a camera trick that erases the light, like...
It doesn't erase the light. If that was true, every criminal in the world could get off by the lawyer just saying the camera reflected the light. You're not even looking at the right shoes. We're going to get into that.
Erases the color because of the light. It means they changed their shoes. It
means
looks
they
like the
changed their
individual is wearing
shoes.
black shoes with white stripes on the right. Later, in the police body camera footage, the perpetrator is wearing Vans with a thin white stripe and flames on it.
Now listen to how he says this went down.
Where did the shoes come from?
A backpack. Or
They weren't wearing a backpack.
They were carrying stuff. I don't know. Or
They weren't wearing a backpack. He almost lied and said that they were wearing a backpack, but they weren't. They were just carrying a weapon.
Took someone's shoes. This is the problem.
They took someone's shoes.
They were carrying stuff. I don't know. Or they took someone's shoes. This is the problem.
They took someone's shoes in the school during a shooting.
You point this out, you're like, oh, that's interesting. And people are like, conspiracy theorist, maybe stepping on broken glass caused damage to the shoes. So she grabbed a pair of shoes from a shoe cubby because it's a school and there's a bunch of shoes in there. Who knows?
Oh my God, dude. Just wow. I don't even know what to say. But anyway, let's go to the video where I show you a lot of evidence on that. Because it's amazing to me that people are using colors on camera because they're factual until you point out something is wrong with them. I want to show you again here. If you look at these shoes in every still shot, they are white and black with some type of silver stripe. And these moles and shills out there are saying that you can't see color from that far away. But if you look at the piece of paper down here by the photocopier and blow it up, you can see the red and the blue on the paper. You can see it in the original shot. It is that high definition, which is pretty high definition for a security camera, which brings me to this. I was thinking about this whole thing, and I remembered that the police, or the feds even, busted a dude, a serial robber, for wearing the same shoes on TikTok. Let's check that out real quick.
This is one of the TikTok videos police say they used to track down a suspected serial robber. Police say the guy with the fancy footwork is Chosen Hannah. A federal criminal complaint says those white Nike shoes with red accents match the shoes worn during 4 armed robberies between December 1st and February 1st.
So these moles out there are telling you that you can't tell the color or what type of shoes are because of that camera, because of the lighting or the camera or video compression, or because they're not Pumas because they never were Pumas. The Pumas was a straw man thing in the first place. However, the feds or the police could identify a serial robber based on this shit right here that looks like pink blurs. Seriously?
All right, let me just say this out loud, because I want to get this straight in my head.
You know what's finna occur? In fact, this TikTok was posted by Hannah the same day police say he committed the first robbery.
So they're identifying him from those shoes, those blurry ass shoes right there. And yet these shills and these moles are out there attempting to debunk the shoe issue based on the actual evidence that's out there. So they're saying that this is good enough to find somebody, arrest them, and get them to confess robberies. But every single still from the video that shows black, white, and silver shoes walking around the school, every single screen cap. And that is the case in this old video. I have screen cap after screen cap, all types of video from this case in different lighting everywhere in the school. Low lighting, black, white, and silver. High lighting, black, white, and silver. Other lighting, black, white, and silver. Every one of them shows black, white, and silver until the dead shot. The death shot shows flame Vans with a white stripe. Completely different shoes. And doesn't show the color until the body cam picks it up. Are you fucking serious?
I am sitting in a room full of fucking idiots. You dumb motherfuckers!
I mean, this is some far-reaching shit. So you had all these people, you know, identifying who and what these people were, or what they were wearing by the colors on a video in bright daylight. Bright daylight. But when you find an anomaly in a video with high definition surveillance, you're wrong and you're crazy if you point out a color discrepancy. You know, and then people like Tim Pool are saying she took somebody's shoes, man. Like, it's just nuts. It is nuts. If that's the case, no one should be able to look at video at all for anything. Period. Now, we're coming to the end of 2025, and everybody is talking about MK Ultra all the time. Ian Carroll, he mentions it in videos all the time. This reads just like MK Ultra. This reads just like an MK Ultra victim. You can look up MK Ultra now, and there are video after video after video, but they never go past, you know, the 60s MK Ultra. You know, MK Ultra is under a different name now. It's just a catch-all phrase at this point. All of this stuff that was done, the psychic driving of repeating messages into somebody's head like this, all of that, it was done to eventually go wireless. And these people never, ever, ever discuss where MK Ultra has gone, any of it. And I want to just touch on this and say that MK Ultra, and I've talked about this before a lot, but MK Ultra now, what it's turned into is a wireless system that is designed to weaponize somebody's survival instincts against themselves. So something will begin happening to somebody, and they will convince them that the target that they want dead, hurt, maimed, whatever, attacked, is the one doing it to them. So let's say that you want Joe Blow, let's say some agency, some corporation, or somebody has a problem with Joe Blow, who works in weapons development, or he used to work in weapons development and knows something, right? So they begin doing something to the neighbor. You know, they're chattering in his ear, or he's hearing things in his house. And then they start hinting to him that it is the neighbor who's doing it. It's the neighbor. It's the neighbor. So, you know, guy starts thinking about it and goes, oh, wow, he was in weapons development or whatever. You start putting the pieces together. It doesn't matter if the guy's a mailman or a weapons developer. They figure out a way to convince you that that is the person doing it, right? Or it's somebody you used to work with or whatever. They can make it work. And then they convince you that this person is killing you with microwave radiation or whatever it is. And they get this person to go after that person to try to stop the torture that they are going through. That is how MK Ultra works now. And nobody is discussing it. Nobody. So all of this MK Ultra that they're finally talking about in mass, they're not talking about what it really evolved into, why it evolved into that, and why it was tested in the very first place. All of that psychic driving and everything that they did to people was being tested to eventually, and it did very quickly back then, it went wireless, and they were capable of doing this to somebody in their house, sometimes during their sleep without them even knowing, for 8 to 12 hours a night, right? And then eventually ramping it up, depending on what they're experimenting with, what they're testing, or what their goal is with the technology that's already functional and weaponized. So there is a big, big gap that none of them are covering. And if you're new here, you can watch hundreds of videos on this channel all about that. Go to my homepage, go through the list. And speaking of MK Ultra, I want to talk about a prediction that I'm going to make now at the end of 2025 about people like Nick Fuentes, and Nick Fuentes specifically. Nick Fuentes is the perfect example of a guy in his late 20s. The average guy who has things currently going on, that it's going on his way, and they will totally block out intuition and reality in a lot of these cases. Fuentes is in the middle of LARPing as though Candace Owens owns the patent to the Charlie Kirk anomalies case, right? Trying to appear super normie, as if thousands of other people who have reported and talked about the Kirk case are all Candace Owens lovers. In his own comments, anyone who tries to speak about the Kirk case is instantly called a Candace lover, right? It's bizarre. It was thousands of other people who put in the work, not just Candace Owens. She, basically came after the fact, really. I mean, as far as, evidence went. The Fuentes camp is pretending that Owens is literally puppeteering anyone who doesn't believe the official narrative about Kirk. You know? And in the mind of Fuentes, every single idea and quote-unquote conspiracy theory about the death of Charlie Kirk has come from the mind of Candace Owens, which is odd, because I spent a good month myself doing extensive research into that case while posting my findings, and I don't think I ever watched anything by Candace Owens during that whole period. The whole thing is just bizarre to me. It reminds me of Ben Shapiro. You know, Nick Fuentes is acting like Ben Shapiro in a lot of ways. In the beginning of Ben Shapiro, people would listen to him break and annihilate his opponents using just common sense, every time. People began to like him. Then Shapiro began drifting away from common sense every time a subject came up that had anything to do with his interests. Then he would start getting illogical and weird. And people noticed. They really began to notice. And this leads me to believe that Fuentes has like Newt Gingrich aspirations. You know, I laugh at the fact that Fuentes scoffs about geoengineering and chemtrails. He does. You know, he'll say that that totally illegitimizes like a channel or a person or whatever. But then I have to remember that Fuentes was born in 1997 or 1998. And this guy has no idea what a sky looks like without chemtrails, right? But either way, all these doors are locked with Fuentes. You can't walk in any of these discussion doors with him, and I find that concerning. Now, since Fuentes stays within those lines and even claims that talking about weather modification causes a channel to lose all credibility, he is clearly not schooled in other subjects like Manchurians and the style of technology that is used now to achieve it. And with a psyche that is currently on high alert, he is the perfect subject for the coming Fuentes. So let me explain this. Fuentes has made a lot of remarks about the rifle and the caliber allegedly used in the Kirk event, you know, taking the side of the official narrative. And by his language, most guys who have seen a thing or two out there would come to the conclusion that Fuentes has very little real life experience. When it comes to real life experiences, Fuentes has never really left Oakview Circle or whatever cul-de-sac type neighborhood that he grew up in, you know. But here is my prediction. Fuentes has openly talked about lots of personal aspects of his life. And these are aspects that I would not be advertising to the world when you have so many enemies thinking about ways to eliminate the issue, being you. People like Fuentes don't realize the information you are giving away while doing that. Whether that be in his videos, in emails, in texts, etc. He talks about his personal life and his fears, neurotic behavior, all that kind of personal stuff, way too much. And people don't realize what can be done with information like that when it comes to building a psychological profile. None of these groups or agencies are going to take him out in a very obvious fashion that would immortalize him, and it would make him an absolute martyr for the right. Getting a Manchurian to do it, like I was talking about, would be effective, an MK Ultra style Manchurian, but it wouldn't bring home the points that these organizations are always trying to push about people like Fuentes. You know, the idea that people who think like Fuentes are basement-dwelling dudes who just can't get laid no matter the circumstances, that these basement-dwelling guys are incapable of normal human interaction and live socially isolated lives, gradually becoming more and more insane over time. That has always been their message. Always. And since they started turning on the gamers, that's when that started. They even have farms of sock puppet accounts that parrot that exact message. You know, Fuentes has had very real encounters with people showing up at his house to do harm to him. You know, first off, multiple women, who I won't name the organization that I believe they were in, but they were doing some type of coordinated drive-by of his house, with one going to the door and getting shoved and pepper sprayed by Fuentes, rightfully so, because he had no idea what she was going to do, you know, what she was going to actually do while she was trying to video her own self-produced altercation with Fuentes. You know, he had no idea, so I condone everything the guy did in that situation. Numerous people were circling his home like sharks. Then a lunatic driving a car but wearing a motorcycle helmet showed up to the Fuentes house after he had already killed a couple of people downstate. And the dude had a gun, a crossbow, and some other shit. And he tried getting in the home every way he could. It was caught on camera. Then he ended up getting taken out by the police after he ran off and broke into someone else's house and killed their dog. Crazy. But the point is, he already has a fair level of well-justified high alertness. So he is sensitized, so to speak. And what is that the perfect scenario for? It's the perfect scenario for a Raj Munsinghi type operation. Now, the funny part is, someone like Fuentes would totally laugh at this and call it silly, out there, or paranoid, or whatever, the exact same way that Raj Munsinghi would have. And that is exactly why and how people like Munsinghi fell for it and get taken out. And so will someone like Fuentes. So, if you don't know the Raj Munsinghi case, I will link to it below. But in these cases, Munsinghi wasn't hearing the typical quote-unquote voice-to-skull system because that defeats the purpose of voice-to-skull. Voice-to-skull means voice to skull. This is simply sound to area. Can it entail voices? Yes, but not to the skull. The voice will sound as though it is downstairs or upstairs in your attic. You know, it's backed up with rummaging sounds, footsteps, doors being opened and closed, and any other sound you can imagine in a home, including gunshots, just like the Mickey Mouse version that Woody Norris opened his big mouth about like 15 years ago.
So again, this idea of being able to put sound anywhere you want to is really starting to catch on. We've got the military had just deployed some of these into Iraq where you can put fake troop movements a quarter of a mile away on a hillside. Or you can whisper in the ear of a supposed terrorist some biblical verse. I'm serious.
Now, whether or not Fuentes is attacked with the sound of intruders' voices continuously over days, weeks, months, etc., or whether he continuously hears walking, doors opening, typical haunted house ops is an unknown. But this usually happens in one of two ways. The subject is either attacked with the 0 to 11 blast.
These go to 11.
In a very short and fast and violent manner, or they are slow roasted by the technology, meaning it starts off with little things and gets heavier and more intense over time. And that all depends on the personality profile of Fuentes himself, which he has openly given away to people. But with all that said, there are only two outcomes to all this, depending on how long he lasts and how long this is done to him, and neither one ends up with Fuentes on top. 1. Fuentes freaks out, makes claims of break-ins, people in his home, despite other evidence clearly showing otherwise, just like the Raj Munsinghi case, which brings his mental state into question, with seemingly paranoid behavior or claims, and it causes him to lose any and all credibility with his base. He just looks like a shut-in nut, right? Or 2, Fuentes freaks out, goes after what he believes is an intruder in his home, and gets himself taken out. We don't know if he owns a gun or not, just like Raj Munsinghi. If it goes this way and Fuentes survives it, it will most likely be found that there was no intruder, and he will again suffer the same fate as scenario number 1, being looked at as someone who is, mentally ill and making claims, right? But Fuentes is being used right now as a show and tell object to promote censorship. But when that becomes old and it's served its purpose, you can bet that something like this will be used on him, because it will promote all the ideas that they've alluded to about guys like Fuentes for all of these years. This is what MKUltra has graduated to. Not, taking people to secret hideouts and hypnotizing them in a warehouse somewhere, or whatever people talk about. They don't understand it. They haven't studied it. This is what will happen. And Happy New Year and Merry Christmas and all that. Look out for Charlie.
We are one. When my boot comes down on your neck, we are one. That's right. Piano solo. Do you feel it? I feel it. It's got me by the feels. So bad.